Are you going back to school wondering how to manage your money without sacrificing your social life? Hello, my friends, and welcome back to Heart-Centered Money Conversations, a series for financial wellness. I am Laura Plahuta. I'm an emotional clearing practitioner, and this is my amazing friend, Kristen Mabee, who is a financial coach here in Ontario. And we're going to be chatting today all about making the most out of your time while you're in school and really setting yourself up for an amazing financial future. And so if you did not catch the last episode, we chatted all about overspending. So if you're finding that you're overspending in areas and you really want to understand what is happening within you to cause those things, where you're wanting to kind of receive a little dopamine hit or a little bit of validation from whatever it is that you're buying, then that will be an episode for you. And as always, a little disclaimer that this series is for financial education only. We are not sharing any advice or anything. Our whole intention with this series is really to just provide you with both like the financial education as well as the understanding of your emotions and your mindset around money so that you can come out of this series really making the most out of it, so that you can create the financial future that you really see you want to have and that is possible for you. So on today's episode, we're gonna, Kristen's gonna be getting into specifically around being in school, around budgeting, around having a side hustle or a job, around having an emergency fund, around how to utilize credit cards, and also your student loans, making the most out of them. So without further ado, I'll let Kristen take it away.
Awesome. I'm so excited. It's such an exciting time of year, this back to school. I
Yeah.
feel like even as an adult, we're like, September, new me, right? Like it's kind of
Yeah.
like a New Year's, which
It
is so
totally is. And it's interesting because it's like, even like, we've been talking about like cleaning and stuff.
yeah,
I feel like
yeah,
when I was in school, it was like I have to have all my binders, they're labeled, they're organized, I
yeah.
got my
Yes.
dividers. Like it just carries with
So
you.
if you're not a student, take this time.
Yeah.
It's a really great time to just get your life like reorganized because we're
Clean your
like
closet.
so yeah, clean your
That's
closet.
me I'm talking to.
Yeah, I love that. So, anyways, if you're a student, I'm here for you. I'm so excited to share some tips around money in as like post-secondary. So there's obviously a lot of things that we're going to cover today. The most important one is about OSAP and student loans. I got to put it at the end. It just makes the most sense in terms of order. But I want to start off with budgeting. Now, I know budgeting is not the most sexy topic,
We're
right?
making it sexy, Kristen.
I love
I
it. So it's not something that you're normally thinking about as a student. I know when I was a student, like, did not even
don't
consider
even know if I
writing,
knew the word.
right? Like, sorry, what?
What's a budget?
What? Right? So if you don't have a budget now, that's okay. And if you don't plan to do a budget, also okay. But I just want to give you some tips and how you can move forward around just being mindful with your money, right? So the first thing is just knowing your needs versus your wants. That's the best place to start because if you can kind of hone in on your needs versus your wants, that's really going to help you propel and be successful financially down the road because bad habits, once you start them, they're hard to get out of,
Yeah.
right? So think about things like buying groceries versus takeout, right? Or if you're going to Uber Eats, like go pick it up so you at least save delivery fees, right? Taking the bus versus taking an Uber. Right. I know like we bus everywhere. Uber wasn't a thing when I was in school, but we bus everywhere. And like most systems are like pretty good. So there's a lot of different options. I was talking to a student and she was saying she doesn't cook because the kitchen is always a mess. Her roommates never take care of themselves. Just like find a solution to the problems that are like draining your money away. I think could be a really, really great tool.
And
So when you
outside
have
of the box ones are always the best. Like the first thing that came to my mind was like, why don't you hire like a cleaner to come in? It'd be like probably the price of like two or three of your meals that you're buying out, and you have
That's
somebody in and clean your whole house.
absolutely amazing. Because
Yeah,
you're like, what? Or like hire a student and like be like,
totally.
I'll pay you $20 to clean my kitchen. Like
Hmm.
that's like one meal out.
Totally.
Like that's I love that. So great. So the other thing is like if you're working, which we're going to talk about some side hustles, but if you're working, think about how you're dividing up your money. So consider using like 50% of your income towards your needs, phone bills, groceries, those kinds of things. 30% towards wants. We're in university, we want to have a good time, right? It's like this is when you get to experience life because you don't have like these I want to say like adult responsibilities. I know you're like you're a young adult. Don't get me wrong, but you just don't have like the weight of like a lot of other different things. And
Mm-hmm.
I feel like I didn't even appreciate that when I was in school. So
Mm-hmm.
and then putting away like 20% or even 10% of your income towards your savings. We're going to talk about emergency funds. And that's really going to help propel you forward because there's so much around budgeting and how you're using your money. But using kind of this as a guideline 50% needs, 30% wants, 20% savings, no matter how small it is really going to help you move forward. And just like consider in terms of like needs and wants, like just because you have $5, it doesn't mean you necessarily have to spend it. It's like, well, what if I save this $5 and I save up for something I actually really want that maybe is more expensive? Because
Mm-hmm.
sometimes I feel what happens is we have this immediate gratification and then we want something that's like $100 or $200, and you're like, oh, I don't really have any extra money left. But it's
Mm-hmm.
like, what were all the little things that could have added up to that?
And
So it's
imagine saving even if you didn't know what you wanted to buy yet, like just having it there for when something does pop in that you were like really passionate about.
Yeah, exactly. Or
Best,
like, what if you invested that money and it grew? And then that $200 was just growth off your investments.
right? Yeah,
Now it's exciting.
totally. I wish I knew all of this stuff as a student.
Absolutely. And we're going to talk next time all about investing. So I love that. And just being mindful. So, one, about your own money, but also being mindful around your parents' money. So, because I work as a financial coach, I work with a lot of parents and their kids are now going into school, which is so exciting. But just because your parents are spending money on your schooling or maybe giving you an allowance, that doesn't necessarily mean that they're not struggling or that it's not negatively affecting their retirement years. And this is just something that, again, I didn't think about when I was a student. So it's just being aware. And I just want to open up the conversation around it because a lot of the times it's not something that we think about. And when I was in school, a lot of people were like, oh, it's okay. My parents are paying for me.
Mhm,
Right. Like they just didn't really look at it that way.
mhm,
So, again, just wanted to be mindful about any money that's coming into your possession.
mhm.
Right.
Can I share
Because
something
what
on
you,
that, Kristen?
sorry.
Can I share something on that?
Yeah, please do.
I love that you mentioned that. I was having a conversation with my dad the other day actually, and he was sharing like just like what life looked like for them when we were younger, when it came to work and like how they
Um,
really juggled it with three kids and having a business and all of this stuff and like how much my dad was working. And it's insane because like you said, like when my parents gifted me money for schooling or my grandparents, like I at that point didn't see the effort that was put in for them and also the sacrifices that they had to make in order to actually bring that money in so that they could really be able to be generous with
yeah.
us. And it's like it's a whole different thing. It's one of those things where you kind of I know for me, like you don't really understand it now. Like at that point, I didn't, and not until looking back at it, like you said. But it's like a respect kind of thing as well, like you said, about like really like being grateful for that money. Whereas I think before I just took it for granted because I didn't know the backstory or see or remember like what my parents had to do in order to make that money.
Yeah, yeah. I think that's a really good perspective on things is like the hard work, right?
Yeah.
Because like, I honestly I didn't know how much my mom made until we did my OSAP application.
Mhm.
And now like knowing what I know about finances, I'm like I'm so proud of her for being a single mom, like raising two kids on the
Right?
income that she did. It's just like it's
Yeah.
phenomenal. And she
Mhm.
never shows hurt, right? Like our parents are so strong that
Mhm.
you don't all like if your parents are really open about their finances, that's great. The reality is most people are not,
No.
right?
Yeah.
Especially like our parents' generation.
Yeah.
So it's just being respectful and like we talk about like law of attraction, right? So if you're being mindful with all the money that you have, regardless of how you get it, that's going to help you later on because you're building good habits. And it's
Mhm.
all about like what you do with your habits now. Because if you're spending, and we talked about overspending in the last episode, immediate gratification, that's just going to continue on because it's going to be like dopamine hits all the way. But if you can learn how to, hold on to that money and get dopamine through investing and growing that money, like it's a whole different future for you. So it's
Mhm.
really exciting. So I'm really excited to just like open up that conversation, like I mentioned, around budgeting. And like, even if you don't do a budget, just like kind of in your mind, do I need this? Do I not need this? Is this a need?
Oh,
Is this a
amazing.
want? And just kind of live below your means, because if you learn to do that now, it's really going to help you. Like, it's hard to like put this into words because it's just life experience, but like it's
Mhm.
really, really gonna help you later. There's like one day, like 10 years from now, you're like, Kristen, thank you so much. I
Right.
live
Yeah.
below my means and I retired early.
It used to be the flex to like have to keep up with all of the social things. And now I feel like it's like the new flex to just be friggin' like super smart for your future. Cause then you have less like moments, you know?
Yeah.
It's
And
like,
if you're like me, I moved a million times when I was in school. I would like go to school for 2 semesters, move home, move back, move it,
mm,
I was always moving. The less stuff you have, I promise, the better. And it just
totally.
brings you so much more happiness. Is like, just stuff doesn't bring us happiness, and find the thing that actually does. So
Yeah.
I was talking to a student recently, and they said that they eat out a lot because their roommates don't do the dishes and the kitchen's always dirty. Like, let's find some solutions, because eating out is like just draining the probably the little amount that you're earning. Let's be real. Like, when you're in school, you're working part-time, you're not, making six figures.
Yeah.
So something just to think about. And consider using a budgeting tool. So I have a really great budgeting guide that I created, trying to just keep things simple. That's what I'm all about, is trying to keep finances simple. So that's going to be linked below. And you could just honestly print it off and start filling it out and see what makes the most sense for you. But a really good rule of thumb is, with your income, 50% of your income should go towards your needs, like groceries, phone bill. Really, as a student, you don't have a ton of needs, which is nice.
Mhm.
And then 30% can go to wants, and then 20% can go to savings, right? So that's kind of a good like ballpark. Or if you're like still like, okay, I don't really have 20%, look at 10% towards savings. And we're going to chat about that a little bit more too. And look at, in terms of, just because you have the money to spend, that doesn't necessarily mean that you should spend it. And you're like, Kristen, I hate this already. You know, like,
And
hold on with me, okay? But the reason is because if you put that $5 away and you save that $5, it's gonna put you in a spot that you're gonna be really proud of once you graduate. And like, you're gonna, like, when I graduated, everyone I knew had a ton of debt. And you're gonna be the one person you're like, no, I'm actually okay, right? Like, I can actually afford to get an apartment, right? Because let's be real, things are getting more expensive these days. So just be mindful of where your money is going. And, obviously we have things that we want, right? Like, we still want to live the life that we want during university. These are like the best days of our lives, they say, right? Like, it's kind of like you have so much fun in university, but it's just being mindful. And if you are eating out, for example, like, maybe you buy something that's not super expensive, so that way you have a little bit left over. Because reality is like, you're not going to remember whether you ate a steak that day or a salad. You're going to remember that you were out with friends, right? So I know this is like a lot all at once. The other thing that I want to know is like, what I heard a lot when I was in school was like, it's okay, my parents are paying for it. And I think that's one thing that we don't really consider a lot as students. So
Mhm.
I was thinking about this as you were doing the introduction. I graduated 10 years ago from
Wow.
post secondary, which like doesn't seem like that long ago.
Mhm.
Um, but that's what a lot of people would think is, my parents are paying for it and they just don't have necessarily the same boundaries with their money because it's not necessarily theirs. So just keep that in mind because life is just getting more expensive. And just because your parents are paying for it, that doesn't mean that they're not struggling to do so. I
Mhm.
don't know everyone's situation, but this is just like kind of PSA, like just be mindful.
Yeah.
And then just work on living below your means because if you can master this while you're young and you have a part-time income, that's really going to help you later in life because reality is like we build these habits and the longer that we have habits of overspending, check out the last episode, the harder it is to kind of get over that, right? Like I was listening to this podcast about minimalism and they were saying about how you need to be mindful that you don't need these things or you don't want to spend your money in those ways,
Mhm.
right? And just think if like I order on Amazon 3 times this week. It was things that I needed. Like I need to get a new light for the office here. It might flicker while we're over here. But it's so easy to just jump on Amazon and order something that
Totally.
maybe isn't like a necessity in our lives. So
100%.
that being said, if you do want to spend money, let's talk about side hustles. Right? It's like balancing those needs and wants, right? So like earn while you learn, right? Consider finding a part-time job, even if it's just during the summer or if it's something you can do that doesn't interfere with your studies. And there's so many things right now that you can do that doesn't really interfere with your class schedule and you can be your own boss essentially. Have that freedom. So
Mhm.
maybe you teach English from home. Like a lot of these companies, you're teaching to Asian companies and their 12-hour time difference. So you can do it before you go to school. You can Uber or Instacart or like, I'm sure the digital marketing, I don't know. There's like a million things that you
Mhm.
can do online too. So there's definitely ways to kind of boost your income. So that way you can enjoy the things that you like. It's not about not necessarily not spending, but like balancing the income portion, right? That money has to come from somewhere.
Mhm.
All right. So it's really interesting too because these side hustles are going to teach you a lot of life skills. One thing I found when I was in university, I'm like, yeah, this is really good. I'm great at studying. I was really good at memorizing, like regurgitating on a test and
Yeah,
like
yeah.
forget,
Totally.
right? Like I don't love the system. That's just not my forte, right? But it didn't teach me life skills. So I actually went to college after university so I can get like hands-on practical. And
Mm.
having a job while you're in school is going to teach you people skills, how to take initiative, discipline. It's going to teach you responsibility, like a lot of these things that you need just for everyday life,
Mhm.
right?
For sure.
And sometimes you don't think about that until, 10 years after you graduate. So I really want to talk about if you do have that part-time income or if you're having some income coming in whatever form that looks like, look at putting 10% away. I know I mentioned 20% earlier and that would be great. But the reality is like 10% is very realistic. And that's 10% of like whatever you're earning. If you make $4 or let's say you make $10, easier math,
Make it
right?
easier, yeah.
You make $10, put $1 away, right? So it could be like, oh, I sold something online on Marketplace. Put $1 away. Put some money towards an emergency fund because emergencies are going to happen whether now while you're in school or later. And the reality is like a lot of students, they rely so much on student loans. By the time they graduate, they owe thousands of dollars. I was talking to somebody the other day and they were saying it's 20 grand a year, including residence and everything to go to school. And I'm like,
Imagine. Crazy.
excuse me?
Yeah.
It's like 80 grand if you're going for a 4-year program,
Mhm.
right?
Even when I
And so
went, it
it's
was
like
quite pricey, but I can imagine now it's like even more.
yeah, I'd be really curious to know like just tuition costs, but
Mhm.
if you know and you're open to sharing, let us know
Yeah, let
below
us know
because
what
we
you're
we were
paying for
really
sure.
curious about that.
Yeah.
But you can retire with retire, graduate with a lot of debt, or you can retire and have some funds.
Mhm.
Because like once you graduate, maybe you need a new vehicle, you need to get to your job, or like you want to be able to get a new laptop, right? Because you've used yours for the last 4 or 5 years or whatever that looks like.
I feel
That's
like,
just my experience. So I did 5 years.
yeah,
Go
I
ahead,
feel like
Sarah.
too, like it's a lot of pressure on yourself coming out of school. Cause I remember when I graduated from paramedic and then I came into working, like I felt like this, like, I don't know, I don't think it was really like me, but it's just like the societal pressure of having to work so hard to make money, like just because you were out of school then now. And it was like, it really like impacted my health and stuff like that too, just with that pressure. Like it was all an internal pressure. It wasn't from anybody outside of me, but it
Yeah,
was more challenging. And I like you said in the beginning, I wish that I had these kind of skills already right from the very get-go, like right from
yeah,
young, being able to do that. Like even how
right.
you were saying about like having the emergency funds, like having the different funds set up, just simple things like that. And then having the systems where certain percentages goes into them every single month. Like now I have that going and it's like so cool to be able to see it like just like going and then like things are growing and it's like really neat to see because you're not actually consciously doing anything. You just got the systems in place and now it's doing it for you, which is like the ultimate goal when you're in school. Cause like you said, you have so much more to focus on, like your studies.
Yeah, exactly. It's there's so much pressure while you're in school. I remember just being so stressed
Yeah.
about deadlines and different things. Like high school is one thing, like post-secondary is like a whole nother.
Yeah.
It's like a
I had
whole nother ball.
hives for weeks from stress.
Wow. Great. I remember
Insane.
going to like one of my professors and I'm like in tears and I'm like, I could never get this
Right?
done. And he's like, too bad. Like,
Totally. Yeah, yeah. I was always very good in school, but like the pressure was just like insane that I put on myself. Had hives and then my IBS was insane. Like
wow.
crazy when I was in college.
So this is like, I feel like this is a lot of like, don't do this, but like take it from a perspective of like, okay, how can I make adjustments to move myself forward?
Mm.
And it's not like, don't do these things, but like reconsider what you are doing or
Yeah.
the what you might do later,
Yeah.
right?
It's just like a
So
more, it's like an intentionality that you're putting onto it. Like with everything that Kristen's sharing, like just take it all in and see what resonates and
yeah.
see like what you want to implement into your own life, what makes sense for you, because
Yeah.
it's going to be completely different for everybody that listens.
Yeah, absolutely. And I wanted to share too, because like numbers are my thing. But I wanted to share, like, if you're putting $25 a month, say for 40 years, which you can probably, like, if you're in university right after high school, like, you can probably put it away for more than 40 years, right? Because most people retire at 65, we'll say retirement age. I look at retirement as a number, not an age, but for this, let's say 65. But say
Hmm.
you're paying $25 a month away for 40 years, assuming a 9% return, which is super reasonable, it grows to about $118,000,
Yeah, it's crazy.
which is like, you're like, oh, $25 a month, that doesn't really seem like that much. But it's actually huge,
Mhm.
right?
Yeah.
And I would say, like, when you're looking at emergency fund, just set a number in your mind of like how much you want to have saved if something were to go wrong. Like we were talking about, like if you need a new laptop or any of those things, you
Mhm.
have that money available,
Would you
right?
say, Kristen, to know kind of what amount for your emergency fund, take a look at what the things you have are. Like if you own a house and you're going back to school, you might need a bigger emergency fund if possible. If you own a car, then that may be a certain chunk. Like if that's kind of the biggest thing you own, or if it's your computer or whatever the things like when you look at the things that you own that could potentially go wrong, would you say kind of gauge it on that?
I think that's a really great method to do it because especially like if you own a car, for example, like cars are so we just
I
bought a
just
new
had to
car
drop
like
a
a
big
month
chunk on it.
ago.
Yeah, so did you.
It's crazy. It's
Yeah.
crazy. So it's like it's a really good perspective because then if something small goes wrong, you're like, oh, whatever. I have 20 grand saved in my emergency fund,
Yeah.
right? So it's a lot easier that way. So a couple good episodes to check out, like about these different things, is episode 2 about paying yourself first, and then episode 12 and 7 are all about budgeting. So if you're like, I don't like, I want more information, because where this is kind of an overview, really want you to dive in and do some learning about the series. Like the series is all about the education. So
Mhm.
those are some good places to start.
For
And when
the
you're
pay
looking,
yourself first, I just want to like really stress the importance of that one. Like when you understand that
yeah,
concept, to me, it never really made sense in the beginning because I was like, oh, well, when I get a paycheck, I'm getting paid. I'm paying myself, when I receive my paycheck. But it's
right?
completely different. It's like, no, you're paying yourself for like your actual future too. It's not
Yeah.
just like what you're
Paying
receiving.
your future
Moment.
self, if you look at it that way.
Exactly.
Yeah.
Totally. Yeah. Which is a game
Yeah.
changer. Like that
And
one
like Laura said,
episode will change your life.
for real, and just like automatically having money come out, you're not going to notice the difference, I swear.
No.
Like so many people are like, "Oh, I don't know if I can afford it." It's like you're just putting the money in a different spot. It's not going anywhere. If anything, it's going to grow for you and do magic.
Yeah.
You know?
It's like not
Like,
even recognizing your Netflix bill going out.
yeah.
It's the exact same thing.
Yeah, it's like you don't even know that these things are happening, or you just like
Right?
forget about them, right?
Totally,
And if you
yeah.
just like prioritize it too, like maybe Netflix is a priority to you, you're a student and you have like time to just, Netflix and chill, right?
Kristen's
So,
just jealous. She wishes she had more time to Netflix and chill.
yeah. So yeah, so those are like some of the things to consider. And like I personally like using the TFSA, so tax-free savings, as like a tool to have an emergency funding because you can invest it in a mutual fund or something that's going to help it grow, or even like a money market account or high interest savings. I'm going to chat next episode a little bit more about like different types of investments. Um, but episode 3 talks all about like the tax-free savings account as well. So the next thing that I want to share about is credit card debt. So this one's like really interesting because obviously like we're stressing how important saving is, which like yes, I know everyone knows, but it's like actually doing it is like a whole nother ball game, right? So credit cards are kind of like the same idea. So I personally am not a fan of how society has like made credit cards used as like a positive for us because we're like, okay, it's gonna help you build your credit score, you're gonna get points and like all these different things. But the reality is like these are things that like attract us to get into debt and stay into debt, right? Like nobody or like not many people are teaching like how to get out of debt and how to stay out of debt. I teach about breaking up with your credit card. If you're just starting out, it is a good tool to build your credit, but you have to pay on time. Like that's the thing is if you have a credit card, you're maxed to your limit, you're not making payments, like that is only hurting your credit score.
Mm.
So it's like paying on time. So it's knowing that you're gonna pay it off every single month, the entire balance, and even potentially using your points to pay off your credit card, right? So there's a whole episode all about credit cards because I have a passion about them. But I think it's really important to just again live within your means. And if you are going to use a credit card, just ask yourself, am I willing to spend an extra 20% for this item? Right? We typically buy things on sale. Say it's on sale for 20% off, but then you pay 20% just in interest on that item because you didn't pay it off right away. Basically bought it full price anyways, right? Or say you bought it full price, then it's even worse. Right? So these are some of the things that we don't necessarily think about.
And I
And
feel like also
it's
like, do you need it like right now? Like, is it something that you can then save that money for and then get it when you have the money too? Like, I feel like we've kind of been raised in a
yeah,
society where we want everything right now because we're constantly going outside of ourselves to receive something. That it's like, if you could just like have that self-control to like be like, is this something that I need right now? Because I know for me personally,
yeah,
a lot of the things that I used to put on my credit card, it's like, was it really necessary in that moment? No, it was only, I only did it
right.
because it was there in the moment and I had some sort of impulse at that moment,
Yeah,
right? But if I didn't do it, I wouldn't have even thought about it like even the
yeah,
next day or the next week. It wouldn't even cross my mind to do it anymore,
yeah.
right?
I think that's one of the things we talk about in the credit card episode, episode 5, is put it in your Amazon, like if it's Amazon or whatever, put it in the cart, like the online cart. And if you don't think about it in that week, like give yourself
Yeah.
a time frame, delete it.
And it
Like who
works.
cares,
Such a good
right?
tactic.
Yeah, or it's like I have stuff in my Amazon cart that I'm like, oh, if I have some extra money, I'll buy this thing. Like I have a bunch of books, right? But I'm like, Spotify Premium, you can get audiobooks now. Or like you can get books from the library. Like you don't
Yeah.
necessarily need to be buying books. Like there's other methods. So I'm like, I have so many books on my list. So I'm like, those can just sit in my cart probably for the next 5 years, you
Totally.
know? So something to think about. And I see all the time people that rack up their debts in their early 20s and then in their 30s, they're like, "Oh crap. How do I get out of this debt?" Right? And now you're creating a negative problem for the future self, right? So it's
Mhm.
all about like being proactive because like one day it's all going to catch up. So just having good habits. If you're paying off your credit card every single month, nothing to worry about. It's good, right? But living within your means. If you can't pay off your credit card every single month, then it's just taking a look at that budget again, right?
Mhm.
And
Mhm.
knowing like, okay, maybe I need to not Uber Eats everything. Because I
Mhm.
think like Uber Eats is a big one for students. Tell me if I'm
Everything's
wrong.
so
Let me
convenient.
know.
Yeah, everything's so convenient these
That's
days.
it, right?
Mhm.
Yeah, and then the last thing I want to talk about, so a pretty quick episode today, but I think is almost the most important one is all about student loans. So obviously, like if you're able to get OSAP or even like bursaries or grants. That's great. I was really fortunate enough. I went through the Tim Hortons Children's Foundation. I was able to get a scholarship through them, and like I'm so grateful for it because it really like made things a lot easier, and I was able to really pay off my OSAP a lot faster because I didn't have to use as much, right?
Mhm.
Um, but one thing with OSAP is like a few things to consider. So think a little bit outside the box here is one is if you do get scholarships and grants and like there's a million out there, there's probably at least one that you can get. And the problem is like a lot of people don't actually apply for them. So if you think that you don't qualify, just like apply anyways because it doesn't hurt and it normally doesn't take a ton of time. I think
Mhm.
there's even websites that lists all the grants and I know that there was when I was in school. I'm sure it's still somewhere on the internet. Let
Yeah.
me know if you have it. Link it below, please. But consider investing your OSAP money if you don't need that money. And then in terms of where to invest it, you really have to see what makes the most sense for you. Because I'm not going to give investment advice, but if you can grow that money, so that way you're going to have to pay it back. But if you end up having a little extra at the end, that's always a benefit, right? It
Mhm.
just puts you like more in your emergency fund kind of idea or like gets
Mhm.
you off on the right track. The other thing to know is that OSAT is the one debt that will never go away, even if you claim bankruptcy.
That's
So
huge.
a lot of people don't know that. Um, is you like it doesn't get cleared when you pay bankruptcy or claim bankruptcy, right? And so just know that if you're taking out OSAP loans, like that's something you're gonna have to deal with in the future.
Mhm. Yeah, and just be
However,
mindful of like what that amount is going up to, you know? It's like if you have a
yeah.
plan to pay it off afterwards, that's one thing, but if you just keep going back and going back and going back, it's like can become a very, very heavy burden afterwards, knowing that that's never going anywhere. It's literally like
Yeah,
I can imagine like coming out into the workforce with like this big, like massive wall that you have to like start chiseling away at before you can start moving yourself forward again.
yeah. So like if you look at it in perspective, is like say you owe $50,000 in OSAP and your first job outside of school is 50 grand. A whole year's salary is going towards paying off that
Hmm.
debt
Hmm.
and probably more because there's interest.
Hmm.
And so the interest actually, like a lot of people think like, oh, there's a 6 month grace period for OSAP. There's 6 month grace period to pay it back. However, the interest starts right away. So
Hmm.
that's like 6 months that it's accumulating interest while you're not paying it. It's
Crazy.
like they did it on purpose.
Yeah, totally. Weird.
That being said, I have a tool for you to pay it back faster. One is repayment assistance. So if you're not familiar with repayment assistance, like Google it right now. I mean, in a minute. Let me finish. Pause.
We're almost done.
So excited today.
I love it.
But repayment assistance, essentially, you put in, at least when I did it, I'm sure it's probably similar, like the government's not super fast to change things.
No.
So you put in how much your income is, and then they'll tell you if you apply for it. So repayment assistance, essentially they cover the interest portion and you're now paying off the principal. So the amount that you actually owe. So it kind of stops the interest and it helps you pay it back faster, right? Because you're not having to worry about like, oh, a third or two-thirds of the money I'm putting towards it is going towards just interest.
Yeah.
So it's super helpful if you can. I did it like as long as I could. I was like, I don't know the number. If again, if you know the number, I am not a specialist in OSAP, not trying to be. But if you know like what their requirements are, and I'm sure we can do a quick Google search, but if you can qualify for repayment assistance, that would really help you to be able to pay it back faster and not have to worry about the interest.
Mm-hmm.
So OSAP can be a really great thing. And like me, I did need OSAP to be able to go to school. I did have a scholarship, which really helped, but it still didn't cover everything,
Mm-hmm.
right? But look at some ways that maybe you don't necessarily need it because I think when I went to school, it's like everyone just applied for it, right? It's like it was just something you did. So see if you actually need it as well, because it is like a big giant debt. Like
Mm-hmm.
it is like a mini mortgage, right? So yeah, Laura, I wanted to see if you're open to sharing about like your experience going to school.
Yeah. Um, well, when I first came out of high school, I wasn't quite sure what I wanted to do. Originally, I wanted to be like a doctor or a vet or police officer, kind of like had like all of this like kind of group of things, but none of them fully resonated. And so I had a family friend that was like, "Oh, you should go and work at Ontario Power Generation. It's one of the nuclear facilities around here because it has good pension and good benefits and it's shift work." I've always been somebody who loves traveling and loves my freedom. So having the shift work was great because I would have chunks of time off, not just like a couple hours kind of in the evening and then sleep and then go back to work. So I did like the shift work kind of better for me. Um, so I went and did that. And then when I came out of that, I was on the list to be hired at Ontario Power Generation. And then they had cutbacks from the government. So they canceled the class. So I was kind of bummed out about that. So I had a year where I worked at Kelsey's as a server. And then after that, I was kind of like, I didn't feel like I wanted to do um, the nuclear operator because it was like really long shifts. It was kind of boring. It was just like checking off checklists, which is great for some people, but for me, it just wasn't what I was looking for. And like when I looked at the people that were working there, like so many of them had like four or five ex-wives, and they were all complaining about having to pay off their ex-wives and like
Yeah.
not very like happy people. So I was like, okay, I don't think this is for me. So
Yeah.
then I ended up going back for paramedic. And it's interesting because I really only went back for paramedic because I saw it on a show called Chicago Fire. Did you ever watch that
Oh,
show?
I love Chicago Fire.
Yeah. Shay and Dawson, the coolest paramedics ever.
So good. I
So
love that that inspired your career. Like,
it did, yeah. So I ended up at that point I went back to upgrade my this is just like typical me. I went back to upgrade my high school marks to make sure I would get in for paramedic because everyone was like it's super hard to get into and I already had like high 80s in high school. So I
wow.
went back and like upgraded them into the 90s just to make sure that I got in. I got accepted and went back to school for paramedic then. And even when I went through that like they like the teachers and stuff were like, oh, like not many of you will get jobs kind of after that. And
Yeah.
our class size, I think we started with 42 and we went down to, I think we graduated with like 17 or 18 people
And a
by the
lot
end.
of programs are like designed to weed people out,
For sure,
which
yeah.
is like
Especially this
so
program
crazy.
too. Like you kind of need to have people like we lost a lot of people like when we started doing our actual placements and stuff like that too, because people
Yeah.
were just like weren't cut out for the job. Or they
Yeah.
didn't think it was for them. So they switched into nursing or they switched into other kind of things that was
Yeah.
similar but slightly different.
Yeah.
Um, and then from there, obviously, I got hired as a paramedic and worked as a paramedic for a few years, and then decided to change my career again into what I'm doing now, working online and doing the holistic healing and stuff like that. But I feel like in the very beginning, I didn't really know what I actually wanted to do. Like I was just kind of doing what my parents said would be good, having pension benefits is just more security.
Yeah,
And then also just like what family and friends said, I didn't really know what I wanted. So it was just like an easy yes. And I had some
yeah,
support from my family for paying for the first round of schooling.
mhm,
So I had financial help, but looking back, like I wish that I had have just like either seeked out a coach to help me uncover what I actually wanted to do, like what
yeah,
excited me, and actually having the confidence to go after it. Because I know I said like I wanted to like originally be a doctor or a vet. Those would probably be my top two that I wanted to do, something medical. But at that time, I didn't have the confidence to go after it. I knew that it was going to be like 6 or 7 or 8 years for me to go through that schooling.
yeah,
And it just
yeah,
seemed easier at that time to just do what other people were telling me to do, opposed to actually confronting the fears that I had around that, of actually going for it. Like, oh, well, what if it doesn't work and all this stuff? But it was all unconscious stuff, you know? So it's only looking
yeah.
back that I kind of understand that stuff. But yeah, I wish that I had have known um back then what I know now, to really just take my time and tune into what I am excited about and what I'm passionate about, regardless the income it brings me, regardless the pension or the benefits and the external things, when it really brings that like internal fulfillment. Because now what I'm doing, like I'm so lit up when I'm doing it, like it fuels me, you know, and it feels so nice to be able to do that. So yeah, it was kind of my
Yeah.
journey with my education and stuff like that.
Yeah, I think something to be that would be interesting if you're a student watching this is just feel into like what makes sense for you. Like, so for
Mhm.
me, I was really passionate about the environmental field. Like, I love that. That's what I went to school for. But I wish that I did like a college, like a hands-on program because like for me, like I wasn't going to be like an environmental consultant or like, and I think you can still even just go to college for that. But like really look to see like what the job is. Like when I went to school, I was like, I'm interested in environmental sciences. Like what program can I take? Where I
Mhm.
wasn't like, what am I going to do at the end? That wasn't where I was at. So I ended up going to college after university because I needed like hands-on practical stuff.
Mhm.
And I did that for a while. Like I did get a job. I worked for an amazing company called Quiet Nature in air. They do like naturalization and like I absolutely loved it. Love the people. But ultimately that's not where I landed, right? And so like when I first started doing finance, if you told me I was going to work in finance, I'd be like, okay. But then I found this passion for helping people and making changes in people's lives. And I knew I always want to make a positive impact. I'm just doing it in a different way. And so
Mhm.
I think it would be really interesting if you are a student, not to discourage you from going to school. That's not what I'm saying. But like interview the people in your lives that have, you know, what they would consider a job that they love. Because like, I don't want to say good job because a good job isn't necessarily a job that they love,
Mhm.
but like ask them if they went to school for that thing, right? Like I took courses after my university to get my licenses for finance.
Mhm.
So I think that'd be like a really good tool to kind of just see and to see if
Mhm.
like if it makes sense
Mhm.
to follow the path that you think you need to go on,
Yeah. And I
right?
think too, like trusting yourself too, because I know, like, I know people too that are in school right now and they're having like crazy anxiety and stuff because they are seeing that they've already done two years out of 4 years. And they're like, I know that this isn't what I want to do, but my parents, like, I don't want to disappoint my parents. I don't want to disappoint this person for being a dropout, when really it's just like having the confidence to be able to say, you know what, like I've thought about this a whole lot. I felt into it. Like I know that this isn't what I am wanting to do right now. Like I need to take some time to figure out what that next move is and not rushing it, you know? It's like
Yeah.
it's okay to start things and then realize that it's not for you, because like you said, that's really how we learn, is by
Yeah.
going through things and like that. So when you know, I feel like just like trust yourself to guide
Yeah.
yourself through that.
I got like goosebumps all over because that's like literally what happened to me. I was in my third year and I was like, I don't want to do this. But
Yeah.
I was like, I'm closer to the end than I am the beginning. But
Mm-hmm.
I was also taught like you don't change your degree.
Yeah,
right? And like that's also not accurate. You can change your degree. And a lot of
totally.
times you can transfer courses. Like there's a lot of options. So in terms of like what we're chatting about today is like if you're gonna spend money on school and go to school, make sure it's something that you love, and
Hmm.
then just make sure that when you're in school, you're setting yourself up for success down the
Hmm.
road.
Hmm.
Because like the emergency fund, being smart with your credit cards, like not taking, not using all the OSAP you get kind of idea
Yeah.
is just really taking a look at the bigger picture because like you deserve so much more and you might be maybe you're in first year and you're like, oh my god, now I have no idea what I'm gonna do. But you might be in first year, go and do the thing, like go to university. Like my best friends I've met through university, right? So like do what you want to do, but just know that life can change and
Hmm.
that you want to set yourself up financially because like I heard this really good analogy is that like money shouldn't be the driver of the car, but unfortunately, money is a passenger in the car. It's just how our society works,
Hmm.
right? So set yourself up so you're financially stable, so that way when life changes,
Hmm.
you're going to be okay.
Yeah. And another thing too that I want to share, like if you're in school and you are somebody who is like having a lot of anxiety or stress or worry or any emotions like that, reach out. Go to reigniteyoursoul.com because our practitioners can help you with that. I wish that I had known like all of the clearing work that I have now when I was
Yeah.
in school. Like, oh my gosh, like it would have just relieved so much pressure and like so many health issues that I had just because of the
Yeah.
emotional stuff that I had going on, which was just patterns that I picked up like from my
Yeah.
upbringing, you know?
Yeah, it's funny that you say that too, Laura. Like my first year of university, I had such bad anxiety. I was like throwing up.
Yeah,
Like
so
I
much
would call my
pressure.
sister like every day to be like, "Oh my God, help calm me down." Like my anxiety was so bad. And if
Hmm.
I had the tools, like now I barely ever suffer with anxiety and it's just like I learned how to work through that.
Hmm.
Um, but like again, we just don't have that tool. So I think yeah, working with a practitioner that can help you, give you the tools that you need because like it's supposed to be fun. We're
And we,
supposed to
we should
enjoy
learn
it.
these things too, right? It's like the financial stuff we should learn right from when we're young. Also the emotional management stuff, like right from when we're young too. So
Yeah,
and I think there's just so much pressure, like a lot on older generations. Like it's like they just like shit on the younger generations. There's always some sort of story associated with each generation. Oh, these ones are
right?
lazy. These ones don't want to work. These ones this. We're here. We're like just trying to do our best. We're like nothing's ever good enough, and it's just like it's stressful, right? So
Yeah.
just know that you're not in it alone ever.
And just know like you're the only one that you need to impress. Like
Mm.
you're the only one that matters.
Mhm.
So like as long as you're happy, just do life, man. Like
Yeah.
just go for it.
Yeah.
Awesome. This was so good. I'm really glad that we had a chance to just share our experiences. Both of us have been through school. If there's anything else that you guys want to know about finance or dealing with emotions around your schooling or just experience during school, let us know. We're more than happy to go through that. And thank you for taking the time. I know this was a lot of information really quick, but I really want you to dive into the other episodes so you can kind of get more of the detailed
More
information.
studying.
More studying.
Yeah. And guys, if
So,
you want help, reach out to Kristen because she will literally hop on a call like this and just like handhold you and walk you through all this stuff. She's incredible.
yeah, all about the education around finance because I didn't get it. Laura didn't get it. Unfortunately, it's not taught in school. So,
Mhm.
more than happy to do that.
Which I heard
So,
it's starting to be taught. I don't know what
yeah,
they're
yeah,
teaching,
I've
but I
heard that.
mean,
I've heard
yeah,
that.
that's incredible.
So, we'll see. Hopefully, the next generation will be better off than we were.
Totally.
And yeah, happy back to school. I know it's
Yes.
coming up so soon. And just feel into your heart around your finances. And thank you so much. Like and subscribe, and we'll see you on the next one, all about investing, which is exciting.
Awesome.
Take
Thanks so much,
care.
Kristen.
Thank
Thanks
you,
everybody for
Laura.
being here with us. Bye.
Bye.